What's up guys, Jayztwocents here and welcome to my home office where if you're a long-term viewer of the channel, you'd remember I made a lot of my videos here. Hundreds of videos were made in this room, and because the winds kicked up in Southern California and unfortunately they kicked up trees right out of the ground and broke power lines, and it is just a mess here in Southern California, and so our studio is without power. So I am here at the home office, and I'm basically making a studio again with a very temporary setup. I'm going to be bringing in my review here of the RTX 2070 from NVIDIA, a highly anticipated launch and one that I think most of us are very nervous about because obviously the 2080 and 2080 Ti launch went without much enthusiasm, I guess you could say. It was a terrible price to performance ratio. So let's see how the 2070 stacks up. Now let's sort of recap. If you guys were not paying attention to the RTX launch back in September, it was, it's launched almost a month ago by the time you guys are watching this video. It was extremely disappointing. I don't know many reviewers who gave it a very positive review because although the graphics card is a huge leap forward in graphics technology or GPU technology, obviously we've got the tensor cores in there, we've got the Turing architecture, we've got real-time ray tracing, which by the way, at the time of making this video, we still have no titles that truly take advantage of ray tracing. We've got the Final Fantasy 15 demo, DLSS demo, which is still not ray tracing. It's just using the Turing cores for anti-aliasing processing. And then we've still got the Star Wars Reflections demo, which is not a game. That is an extremely tailored demo designed to make real-time ray tracing look amazing, which is not indicative of real-world performance. So I don't even show it because it's really just it's not indicative of what the actual user experience is going to be like. But the price to performance ratio on 2080 and 2080 Ti made it an extremely lackluster launch. Sure, it was faster, upwards of 25, 30, 40% depending on the title, but at an increased cost of up to 70% compared to the 1080 Ti, where we're used to seeing generational improvements in the 25 to 30% range at the same price. Unfortunately, when you compared the very comparable price of a 2080 to a 1080 Ti, you saw that it was anywhere from 0 to 9%, which was not great. So that's where the 2070 comes in, a card that I was extremely interested in taking a look at because I wanted to see how NVIDIA was going to fit this in its extremely crowded product stack. Let's look at AMD for a second here because AMD doesn't have a very crowded stack. We have the 560, 570, 580 RX cards, obviously, and then we've got Vega 56 and Vega 64. We've got basically 5 cards that make up the entire product stack. If you look at NVIDIA, on the other hand, we have got, and not including the GT 1030, because that's not really a gaming card at all, that's just a card to give you video for like home theater or just browsing the internet, looking at videos, not really gonna game on that very well. We've got the 1050, 1050 Ti, the 1063G, the 1066G. We've got the 1070, 1070 Ti, the 1080, 1080 Ti, Titan X Pascal, Titan V, although it's not a gaming card, plenty of people are still gaming on them, so that's 10 cards right there. 2080, 2080 Ti, and now 2070. That's 13 cards that you could buy today. The other thing that made the RTX 2080 and 2080 Ti launch extremely disappointing was the nearly impossible, or let's just call it impossible, MSRP price point to reach. Remember, NVIDIA is also in direct sales. They have the Founders Edition card, which is basically a $100 premium on top of the MSRP. EVGA, Gigabyte, Asus, PNY, MSI, I mean, all these companies that are also making NVIDIA graphics cards and buying cores from NVIDIA are competing against their suppliers. So it's a very interesting market that we saw starting with Pascal. So NVIDIA is charging a $100 premium on their cards because they are basically, binning them and keeping the best ones for themselves and slightly overclocking them now with the RTX series. The AIBs are having to compete with that, and they are not basically capable of making cards at MSRP and still make money. If they did that, they would be out of business before you knew it because there would be no profit. There is very little markup whatsoever when it comes to graphics cards, and so it's very difficult for them to do that. So the 2070 we're looking at today is kind of a big deal because it is an MSRP $499 offering from EVGA, that being the RTX 2070 Black Edition. Now, one of the ways they kept the cost down on this card is it doesn't have any frills. It doesn't have a backplate. It doesn't have a triple slot cooler. It's got a very basic cooler, actually. It's the same style fan as you would find on the XC Ultra, but it's a dual slot. It's a much shorter PCB. It has no backplate, no RGB. It only has one power plug, so it's not really built for high-end overclocking. It's going to be stuck to the power limits and stuff that are available to it through a single PCI Express 8-pin, as well as the power being delivered through the PCI Express. So it's going to have a lower power target on there. It's not going to overclock very far, but for the sake of this test and comparing it to all the cards that we've already benchmarked recently here with these launches, everything you're going to see in this video is out of the box settings anyway. So the 2070 Founders Edition card boosts up to 1710 megahertz, where the reference cards are advertised as boosting up to 1620. But I actually saw on this card, with the temperatures kept really, really low with the stock fan curve, because again, not a lot of heat coming out of this core, it is seeing up to 1860 megahertz and then dropping down into the mid 17s when it's under load and the temperatures have sort of equalized and saturated. But keep in mind, pretty much all of the RTX reviews you're seeing though, when it comes to temperatures, 2080 and 2080 Ti included, the tensor cores are pretty much sitting there idle, not doing anything, and those will generate heat once titles start calling for those cores to do something, specifically DLSS being the main thing that's going to be asking for the tensor cores to do something. So as soon as those start becoming more active and in play, the temperatures on all these cards are probably going to go up pretty significantly. Now, the EVGA 2070 Black was sitting at 62C max temp in all of my testing. That's Firestrike, Firestrike Extreme, Firestrike Ultra, TimeSpy Extreme, of course the game titles that we've tested, and I found that to be actually pretty good. Now, that is obviously in an open air test bench, but the reason why we do that is because we don't want the case to introduce any sort of impact on the cooling when we're testing cooler capability on the graphics card. So we allow it an open air environment so we can see what the max efficiency cooling capability is of the card. So obviously your cooling is going to vary depending on your case and ambient temperatures and your environment. Now, speaking of testing, let's go ahead and take a look at those benchmarks so you can see how it stacks up to the 1070, 1070 Ti, Vega 64, and the 1080, all sitting within $100 of the price of this card. And you'll see that this is actually what we were kind of expecting to see with the 2080 and 2080 Ti. So this is what we were kind of expecting to see with the RTX launch, cards that actually become available at MSRP, compete against their past generational brethren, smack them around a little bit, and do it at the same price point. That's what we were expecting to see. Now, a lot of people might look at this and say, well, then why wouldn't you just run out and buy a GTX 1080 or a GTX 1070 Ti and call it a day? Well, that might make a whole lot of sense, but the problem is we're still waiting for features that are not available yet. These cards are technically trying to future-proof themselves by waiting for features to come online as developers implement them. So this is still an investment into the future. Whether or not that's a sound investment is still waiting to be seen. Demos are not going to tell us the big picture. That's why I include synthetic benchmarks in my testing as well as actual game titles, because sometimes you'll see a certain card may take the lead in synthetics, but as soon as you actually put a more real-world test on there, or start looking at titles that actually leverage a GPU in different ways than synthetics, which are very consistent and very optimized, then you'll see that the picture definitely changes. Same thing can be said over AMD. The Vega 64 does really well in synthetics, but then in real-world testing, it definitely trades blows very differently than it does in synthetics. So that's one of the reasons why we test that. Now we're going to be taking a look at 27 custom cards as well, but I found the MSRP card to be sort of the unicorn, which is usually never ever found. You rarely find cards ever at MSRP. I wanted to see what this one was all about because it's the first one that's going to be available, and as you can see, it handedly beats the 1080, and it does it with less power, less heat, less noise, and less money. But guys, tell me what you think of the 2070. This is the card that I was really excited about during the keynote all the way back in August. Here we are now, October 16th. We finally have our hands on it. And I think if you can get the card close to the $500 price point, then it's the RTX launch we needed. It beats the previous generation at the same price point without the features that are supposed to be included even turned on yet. So guys, sound off in the comments below and tell me what you think about the 2070 and what cards do you want us to take a look at. Obviously, this is GPU season, right around the holidays. A lot of you are going to be buying graphics cards, so I want to try and bring you as much information as I possibly can. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one, whether it's here or in the studio. I don't know yet. It is kind of nice though to be able to, when I'm done editing this video, just to go to bed, not have to drive 20 minutes across town. But again, I digress. That's besides the point. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.